This is really the video I started doing on love, and I think I ran out of battery or I ran out of space. I think I ran out of space, so I'm gonna do it again. I just have more space, and I really haven't mentioned love too much because in recent years it's been a source of frustration. All this being said, it's a topic that has driven my life in many different times, and definitely some of my most precious memories have to do with moments that I had, especially love for another person in the form of infatuation or attachment, especially when it comes to like dating girlfriends. And very recently I was I'm here again in Oxford Circus, London, Soho, and I was in a meetup philosophical discussion in Brighton and Hove, and there was a question of, do you believe in love at first sight? And based on that discussion and some of the answers I'm going to try to do in this video, it really, the whole idea about love is basically a physiological adaptation in a community of individuals, such as the primates, to have a lasting bond between two partners in order to have offspring that will survive. And this is using a hormone, I think that's called oxytocin. So it's really the idea of like two partners that usually wouldn't hang out, just hanging out together, and then creating this bond through a glue called whatever hormone, just builds up the ability of people staying the longest together. And if we look at what psychologists have described in love, and a lot of this, I mean, the first idea comes from natural selection and the survival of the fittest, obviously, in communities. But the second idea on love comes from a lot of psychologists, and they basically describe love as having like three different processes. Like first is infatuation. Second one, I think some of them call it love, or enamoramiento in Spanish. And then the third one is attachment. And really is attachment what holds couples together for the longest amount of time. So the idea of love is very critical to understand how communities develop, and a lot of obviously there's all these lyrics and a lot of songs on love and how important love is, etc., etc. And there was some interesting discussions that we had in the meetup, and one was on if it's possible to have love if you're in a survival mode state. So if human beings are in a fight and flight reaction, is it possible to have love or not? Because according to a lot of psychologists, there's the Maslow tower of needs. So really, if you're just fending out for basic needs such as survival, shelter, food, it's unrealistic to really fall in love, because you just have to worry about too much. Some psychologists would say that. But if you look at the Stockholm complex, I mean, there's the Oedipus complex. Obviously, it comes from transference of feelings of having love for your parents to transferring them to a partner, and then you have the transference feeling of the Oedipus complex, and then you have the Stockholm complex of just falling in love with the person who captures you, which I think has to do a lot with protection. And I definitely have felt this feeling of just protecting somebody and just taking care of them. it's really it's a really good feeling. It has a you feel relatively well, and you feel like you accomplished something at the end of the day, I think. But coming back to the whole idea of love, and this is just going back on Eric Fromm's book on love, it really I think most Jungian psychologists tend to romanticize more the idea of love, but more Freudian type psychologists tend to look at it in a much more dry, clear-cut way of just a physiological mechanism. And I think really just chasing the idea of having butterflies in your stomach many times is what a lot of people want their life to be. They want like to feel the butterflies in their stomach. They just want to feel like they are falling in love for somebody. Like, oh, I'm so happy I'm falling in love for somebody else. And I'm just rambling about different concepts and ideas.